Hello Internet, and welcome to Ramblings of a Madman. I'm Alex, and I'm joined by Sean and Stuart for a shallow and probably uninformed dive into unexplained mysteries, conspiracy theories, and the supernatural. How are you doing, Sean?
Great, thanks.
And Stuart?
Yeah, really well, thanks, buddy.
Good, we're all here. So before we start with the main topic, I want to get an idea of our general opinions with regards to mysteries and these kinds of stories. I would describe myself as a skeptic, but I find most of these mysteries very interesting, and often there are scientific theories to explain them. What about you, Sean?
I'm quite skeptical. Like, if it's backed up, again, like I think you said, like scientific evidence, that kind of thing. But, you know, like flat earthers, some of it, yeah, no. I mean, I know, I agree, Australia doesn't exist. I've been there, but it was a myth.
Right, okay.
It was, you know, that kind of thing. I'm ghosts, nah. Aliens have to exist, right? Statistical probability.
I think aliens have to exist, but I don't think that they interact with people. I don't think they're like sentient life.
No, I don't think
they like visited Earth. I don't think they have technology to like travel between across the universe and stuff like that.
No, but prove me wrong.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll cover aliens at some point, and I'll go crazy with all the theories. Sure.
I'd say I'm probably pretty skeptical as well, to be honest. Most of it is probably backed up by science or disproved by science, but I like to keep my opinions open. Someone who considers myself to be reasonably flexible in believing what different people think. Regarding aliens, if anyone's seen Venom, then you'll know my view on that. Spoiler alert. But I guess I'll wait for you to see it, and you can argue that point out later.
We'll do an episode on Venom in the future, just on the movie. Right. So we've got a nice balanced viewpoint, I think, among the cast.
Yeah.
We're clearly none of us believe this stuff.
Unbiased.
So yeah, it's unbiased. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
We have a preference, but that preference doesn't dominate.
Unless it does. We'll see what happens when we get to the theory section of this show, because some of these theories are very stupid, and
I look forward to hearing them.
Mm-hmm. But the nice thing about this, which is what we were talking about before we started recording, was that these two don't know much about this story, so I can kind of mold my opinions onto them by giving them very biased commentary. So yeah. So the first episode, I thought I'd cover one of my favourite mysteries, which is the Mary Celeste. And this is like the original ghost ship story. Like a ship that someone comes across in the ocean, and it seems to be perfectly undamaged, but there's no crew on it, and all the belongings are still there. It looks like they just disappeared off the ship. And it kind of from this story, it kind of comes up in like pop culture a lot.
How so?
Like there's a Doctor Who episode based on the Mary Celeste, and obviously it's a spaceship because it's Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And they come across the spaceship witches. Yeah, you've probably seen it.
I've seen. You've seen
Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And like there's a Pokemon episode on it. Like I remember from my childhood. And obviously it's like the ghost Pokemon were behind it the whole time, but they come across the ship and then
haven't you just solved the conspiracy straight away?
I might have. It was ghastly all along. So the reason that this story kind of got quite popular, because the actual story is quite mundane in itself, but it was very sensationalized afterwards, decades after the event, generally into fictional stories of mutiny, murder, and giant squid attacks, which is a great band name. There you go. The internet, you can have that one for free.
Yeah.
And the most influential retelling was an early work by Arthur Conan Doyle, who's the Sherlock Holmes author.
Okay.
And he wrote a story in the 1884 issue of the Cornhill magazine, which was a Victorian magazine based in London, and it was entitled, probably the most pompous name for a story ever, J. Habakkuk's Jefferson's Statement, which it's not a very captivating name.
No,
for a horror story. No, not very clickbait.
I'm in.
But I mean, this guy knew what he was doing, right? He's pretty famous. So I guess it kind of worked. And his story he changes a lot of the facts of the story. Like, it changed the name of the ship and its crew, but it ultimately ends with all the company of the ship, apart from the character which the story is named, being murdered by, quote, a fanatic with a hatred of the white race. So basically an angry slave, because it was the 1800s and slavery was a thing back then.
I guess that's implicated there, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'll kind of just go through the story chronologically.
Yeah, tell us about it.
You can jump in whenever you want, if you've got any gripes or witty commentary to add. So the ship had a quite long history prior to the famous event. It was originally a Canadian vessel constructed at a shipyard in the village of Spencer's Island in Nova Scotia, which is in sort of northeastern Canada. Like, there's a lot of islands there. And this was in 1860, so the end in the mid 1800s, towards the end. And the ship was originally called Amazon. And as you know, changing the name of a ship is pretty unlucky, which adds to. Didn't you know that? You're not very good seaman, are you?
It's the equivalent.
I am not good seaman. No.
It's the equivalent of bringing a lady on board.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, really? I honestly, maritime law.
There's all these maritime myths.
Nah, I didn't know. That's actually quite interesting.
So that's your first bit to remember.
So what was the second name? Boaty McBoatface? So
yeah. They took a poll on 4chan and they changed it to Boaty McBoatface.
Exactly, yeah. Okay.
So the first captain of the ship was a guy named Robert McLaren, and basically he got the ship, and during its first maiden voyage, the guy fell ill and he quickly died. Midway through the voyage, so he never finished it. Like, he got by part way because he was delivering some cargo, and he got part way. They stopped off. He got ill and he died.
Do you know where they stopped?
It was near. It was like around Nova Scotia. He didn't get very far out of Canada.
Sure.
So then another guy called John Nutting Parker took over as captain. And
his middle name is Nut.
Yeah. His name was Nutting, his middle name. So
oh God.
That's where we are. Is this
a Christian stream, or are we...
This isn't very PG. I wouldn't describe this as PG.
Thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
That was
just
my
want to get it out there, just so all the listeners know what they're in for.
I've already sworn once, so...
Yeah, don't worry about it. So he took over as captain, and he continued this voyage that the first guy was taking over. But during this voyage, the ship encountered further problems. It collided with fishing equipment off of Eastport in Maine, so just out of the US.
Yeah.
And also hit another ship in the English Channel and sank it.
Excellent.
So not off to a good start for the Amazon.
No.
Some say it could be cursed already. So by 1863, a third captain took charge of it, and he was called William Thompson, and he remained in command for 4 years. During this time, the Amazon carried out foreign trade between the West Indies, England, and the Mediterranean, and it had no significant problems recorded.
They managed to get their one-day delivery on time then?
Yeah.
How fast was the ship?
Well, he's doing it for 4 years.
Amazon Prime for you.
Yeah. The original Amazon Prime. Maybe Amazon named after the ship.
Maybe.
Maybe. Might be. So the guy had it for 4 years. It carried out foreign trade between the West Indies, England, and the Mediterranean, and it had no significant problems. So I guess the ship liked this guy, and he hated the first two guys. So it was going good until the ship was wrecked in a storm in 1867.
I'm already getting you're getting the impression you're leading towards the ship being sentient.
I mean, aren't all ships sentient?
No.
I mean, there's anime there's anime, right, with the main characters have the souls of ships in them.
Yeah, like I actually arpeggio.
Have you watched it?
But yeah, no, I didn't like it.
I didn't like it. Was it the souls of ships?
There is actually like a lot of anime like that. I know. Yeah.
Anime's weird.
I get it, and obviously the same way that someone might, I don't know, their car or their bike or something, they give it some sort of thing. But the fact that I'm just catching on to the fact that you're saying this
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, see, what I'm doing is I'm trying to lead up to the big event, and I'm establishing a curse which took place long before the main event of the Mary Celeste. So as I said before, I'm warping my views into you because you don't really know much about this, as all good writers do, much like Arthur Conan Doyle.
So what you're trying to say is your bias.
Yeah. So it was going good for 4 years, and then the ship was wrecked in a storm in 1867 at Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia.
And so it made it home and crashed.
Yeah.
Okay.
It basically totaled. Over the next 5 years, it went through a number of different owners, but it was generally restored, and it was renamed as the Mary Celeste. And it was bought by an American company who renamed it, so it was now an American vessel from a Canadian vessel.
Yeah, so is that still unlucky then? Because if you have like a mop, hang on,
where are you going?
Hang on, he's got to remember the joke. Give him a second.
No, I know the joke. I'm just saying, like, who knows? You know,
everyone knows
wheels and horses. Yeah. So again, like, if you have like they change the mop handles and the mop heads, is it still the same mop? If you fix it, is it still the same boat?
I mean, people think of boats as entities, like you said before. So
I think my mop is an entity.
I mean, you're not famously Jan Etor, are you, from Scrubs?
Dr. Jan Etor, yeah.
Jan Etor.
True.
But like, it's generally known that if you rename a ship, it's unlucky. Because there's like a naming ceremony for ships, isn't there? Where like they break the bottle on the ship.
On the bow.
On the bow of the ship.
I actually know about that, and then Family Guy and it sinks or something.
I'm surprised it didn't happen with this ship, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds pretty. It's not going through the best time, is it?
No.
So it basically had an unlucky history, except for those 4 years with the guy who liked it, and after it was bought by this American company, it came under the command of a guy named Benjamin Spooner Briggs, who was a large investor in this company.
I thought you were going to say his name was Google.
That man's name was Google.
Yeah, Google buys everything.
Joined together with Amazon to make the ultimate one-day shipping company. So Ben Briggs acquired it in 1872, and he's the captain in question, which is who was in command during this famous event.
Okay, Ben Briggs.
Benjamin Briggs. He undertook a voyage, and it was to take a cargo of 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol from New York to Genoa in Italy. On the voyage, he took his wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia.
He brought a woman on board.
2 women.
2 women on board, double
unlucky.
And he brought 8 crew members as well, all of whom he held in very high regard. He had history with them. He'd done a lot of voyages with them before. He knew them quite well. And this is evidenced by a letter that he sent to his mother shortly before the voyage. On November 7th, the Mary Celeste left the harbour in New York, and this was the last time any of the ship's passengers would be seen. Less than a month later, on December 5th, a passing ship called the De Grazia spotted the Mary Celeste at full sail and adrift about 400 miles east of the Azores, which is an archipelago in the Atlantic to the west of Portugal. With no sign of anybody on deck, the captain of the De Grazia sent a boarding party to the Mary Celeste to investigate, and when they climbed on board, they found the ship deserted. Throughout the ship...
Nothing on there. No bodies.
No people. No bodies. I'll kind of go through a bullet point list of the state the ship was in when they got onto it.
Okay.
Throughout the ship, there was no obvious signs of fire damage or violence. So that would be like charred marks or blood or weapons.
Cannonballs, shit like that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was
that's what I was thinking. Were they boarded?
It was a merchant vessel, so they wouldn't have cannons and cannonballs, stuff like that.
No, but they could have been hit by them, is what I mean.
Yeah. On the deck, the ship's only lifeboat was missing, and there was a discarded makeshift sounding device, which is something used to measure the amount of water in the hold.
Okay.
In the hold, there was about 1.1 meters of water, which is a significant amount, but not alarming for a ship of this size. And one of the 2 pumps on the ship had been disassembled. The ship's cargo was intact, apart from 9 barrels, which were empty. So there was 1,701 barrels in total, so 9 of those were empty.
How many people were on board again?
There was
about 11.
8 crew members, Briggs, his wife, and his daughter.
So 11 on board, 9 barrels. Okay.
This is the start to the hangover, right? So 9 barrels are missing.
This is denatured alcohol, remember? So you can't drink this stuff.
I don't know what that means.
Denatured means it's basically poisonous. It's like industrial alcohol.
Okay, yeah. So okay.
Yeah.
Like pure ethanol or
basically,
something like that, yeah.
Okay. Methylated spirits.
So, great night out.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's literally your last night out, because you violently die at the end of it.
It's industrial meth.
Exactly.
It is. Industrial meth.
So, it's of note that the empty barrels were recorded to have been made from a more porous wood than the others, so they were therefore more likely to leak. The crew's belongings.
And obviously, if it was pure alcohol, it would have just evaporated super quick, right?
Presumably, yeah. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but
as far as I know, I could be completely wrong. I thought pure ethanol would be like fuel. It has such a strong smell because it evaporates quick.
Mm-hmm. Well, they weren't really using fuel.
Not a scientist.
Back in these days, I don't think.
Well, no, but ethanol is fuel. Technically, it can be set alight and stuff like that. Can be a solvent, can't it?
Yeah.
So if it has leaked, then they wouldn't have. What I mean is, they wouldn't have noticed any kind of.
Yeah, there wouldn't be
proof.
evidence of spilt chemicals. So
hang on, beg your pardon. How long was it between it left the harbour on November the 7th? Was it
November 7th? It left after being delayed for a couple of days, so they were supposed to leave a bit earlier than that. And then the De Grazia, this other ship, found it on December the 5th, so just under a month.
Oh yeah. It's quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean it's the 1800s. These ships are pretty slow.
Yeah,
it would take months to get across the Atlantic.
A months to get there. Oh, okay.
Wait, so hang on. So the barrels are in the hold, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the hold is full of water, but the barrels are empty.
No, 9 of them are empty. The rest of them are full.
So the poorest ones theoretically should fill with water. So how are they empty?
I mean, I don't think they're that porous because these are barrels to hold alcohol. So it wouldn't be.
Were the barrels actually underwater?
Do you know what? I'm not sure.
Okay, fine.
Let's presume not. Because you said there's a significant amount of water in the hold.
Yeah,
but not
it's not a sticky.
It was 1.1 meters of water. So what?
That's quite a lot.
Waist high?
Yeah. Waist high. Yeah.
So probably almost covering these barrels, I assume. But I imagine they were floating.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Depends how much air was in them, but yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry, Alex. Carry on.
The crew's belongings were still in their quarters and they were largely undisturbed. In Briggs's cabin, personal items were scattered about. Most of the ship's papers and navigational instruments were missing. In the galley, the equipment was neatly stored away and there was no food under preparation, and the ship was loaded with 6 months' worth of provisions. So a lot extra if they needed it, in case they ever got into trouble.
Course, yeah. And I'm guessing a bit was taken, but there was still 6 months left. Is that what you mean?
I mean, there's no way to tell whether any was taken because obviously they were eating it as they go while they were on the.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I can't imagine they were keeping a log of all their food supplies and how much they used.
Amateurs.
So overall, the ship was completely seaworthy, and after they found it, they sailed it to Gibraltar. So the De Grazia split into 2 crews, and one stayed on the De Grazia, and one sailed the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar. And this was 600 miles away, and they did this to arrange the salvage of the ship, because at this point no one owned it, so it was completely up for grabs who could have the ship and also the cargo, because the cargo was worth quite a lot of money at this time. So that's kind of the main story.
Yeah.
What do you reckon about it? It's pretty interesting.
It is pretty interesting. It's got a few bits and bobs that kind of make you want to know a bit more, but obviously we're not sure if we can answer all of it, are we? So the long and short of it is that a previously Canadian boat that was taken over by the Americans is going to Italy. Once it gets off the
London.
coast of Port, I thought it was going to Genoa.
No, it was going to Genoa.
Genoa to Italy.
Its maiden voyage was to London when it was the Amazon. But this voyage is in question by Brits.
So this is on its way to Italy, isn't it?
To Genoa, yeah, from New York.
So off the coast of Portugal, it gets met by a presumably Italian ship with the name Grazia.
It's a British ship. I think I remember from my research.
Okay. and they find it empty.
They find it completely
Interestingly,
empty.
the navigation equipment is gone.
Yeah.
And the captain's belongings are scattered around.
Also, the lifeboat's gone as well.
Yeah, it makes you wonder whether or not boarding is the most likely thing. So they take all the useful bits for the ship that would take it, but the lifeboat can only take, I presume the boarding vessel and the lifeboat can only take so much stuff. So perhaps that's why some of the provisions were left behind, because if they're not far off the coast of Portugal and it's like a Portuguese pirate ship, for example, they're not going to take everything because they've probably got provisions to get them off the coast of Portugal.
Are you suggesting that they got robbed by pirates? Because their belongings were basically still there. Like all the valuables were still on the ship. And also,
were their belongings valuable though?
I mean, the cargo would definitely be taken if pirates were involved, because that cargo was worth a lot of money.
Kind of, yeah.
But it's barrels. It's a massive amount of. It's going to take up a lot of space, right?
But presumably, if you're going to nick something, you'd have the vessel.
You keep space in your own cargo, in your own hold to take the stuff.
The person, if you had a ship that, if you were pirates. Not from experience. If you're going to go nick stuff, you would provision yourself properly. You'd have enough extra space. You'd do that properly. So that wouldn't be the issue. But what if there was some kind of illness? Is there any? No. Right, that was my second thing. My main thing is that I'm getting confused because you said it was 1860, right?
It was made. The ship was made in 1860. This is 12 years later. 12
years later, so it's still, era-wise. I am really thinking of, you said Mary Celeste and stuff like that. I was literally, when I said cannons, I'm thinking like old, like Assassin's Creed Black Flag.
I mean, that was
that kind of
late
ship.
1700s, right? So it's...
Because you said full sail and stuff like that, but...
I mean, ships didn't change that much during this time period. Like, the ship technology was pretty much the same.
Okay.
I believe this was a brigantine ship, which is one of those ones with the big two masts.
Yeah, so it's a really, really long boat with a pointy front on it. That's basically a massive sail ship.
And they have a big sail on each mast and also that triangular sail at the back. I think, remembering my notes, it was like sort of a mid-sized ship. Like I decided not to mention it because it wasn't very relevant, but that's what I remember, because I remember looking up the dimensions of it.
I've literally just Googled the picture of it. Okay, I'm getting the
there's a painting of it. It's pretty famous.
I was basically getting confused because I was like, okay, is it more like pirate, that kind of era, or Titanic?
I mean,
there was like a metal ship?
No, it's a wooden ship.
It's not like a cruise liner.
Yeah.
It's not a proper sail ship.
Yeah, there was definitely pirates around this time.
There's pirates now. There's pirates. There's going to be pirates.
Yeah, pirates nowadays suck. They don't even have peg legs nowadays. At least they should embrace the fact that they're pirates.
Yeah,
come on,
exactly.
Pirates of the world, get your shit together.
Right. The fact that there's no bodies whatsoever, the fact that there's leakage. You said they're porous. There's a chance of leaking and stuff like that. Surely they wouldn't make these barrels for a long trip. If it's going to last like 3+ months, something like that, they would not make, unless they're thick or they didn't know, their cargo and stuff going missing.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, what I'm thinking is
only 9 barrels. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that was it.
Like, what's the percentage loss? It's not very much.
It's like 0.1.
Sorry, the max barrels. How many?
There was 1,700 barrels, and nine of them leaked.
It's less than 0.1.
It's like working in a bar and losing a few glasses of
1,700. Yeah, so you can imagine how big this ship is.
Yeah, they wouldn't send 17 barrels across the Atlantic Ocean, would they?
What is it?
This is the worst profit margin ever.
It wouldn't be worth it.
I can't remember the names of them, but the biggest barrels are massive. They're like at least 3 meters high. The biggest barrels.
I'm not sure what barrels these were, but I'm picturing like the cartoony sort of waist high barrels that you see
with the metal rings around the top and bottom.
Yeah.
So 1,700 of those. That's a lot of barrels.
Forget there's still a chance that is it the sort of alcohol, like denatured alcohol? Would you be able to mix it? Diet Coke or something.
It's like, do you know the alcoholics nowadays drink like mouthwash and stuff? It's kind of like that. You can stomach it, but it's not very good for you.
If you watered it down.
It's awful for you.
If you wanted to get drunk on it, you could.
It's worse than not good for you. It would kill you. Methylated spirits would kill you.
No matter what. No matter if you water it down, there's nothing you can do to it.
Well, I mean, it depends how into your alternative medicines you are in case of diluting things by thousands of homeopathy, basically rings to mind. Homeopathy via denatured alcohol.
Oh, right. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is they would not just be able to have a night.
No.
I just thought, fuck it, let's just use it.
Yeah, where they used 9 barrels and every single person fell overboard. That's the ultimate conclusion.
Yeah, honestly, I'm thinking that. What if there was? What kind of sickness would you get from sea? Like you get like scurvy and shit like that. What could they possibly have? I'm just trying to rule out some kind of.
So I guess what time are we talking about? So we're talking late 19th century, aren't we?
Yeah.
So I can't think if there were any diseases that were going around.
Oh, there's plenty of diseases back then.
Plenty of diseases.
Pretty much every disease under the sun.
But the things like the plague had already been and gone.
The plague's still around now. They had it in Madagascar like last year, didn't they?
Yeah, that's true.
It's just it's easily fixable now. That's the reason it's not prominent.
I presume that they're more likely to get things that are related to travel. So things like stomach bugs, so cholera, from eating transmitted food, I guess. So I don't know how hygiene, I assume, was pretty terrible then.
So you're suggesting that they all caught an illness and died, and their bodies fell to the sea?
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense because the body.
What I was thinking in my head is there any kind of like, would they've got like some kind of psychosis or something, and then just been absolutely messed up? Because I was thinking, obviously, starting off with they just drank a lot, but that would, if you're saying that would have killed them, so I'm ruling that out. Then what is the other alternative? So I'm literally just trying to rule out some kind of psychoactive substance, including alcohol, or just some kind of illness that has just made them go absolutely batshit crazy, and they all just walked the plank together and then couldn't get back on the boat. Have you seen Adrift?
I haven't.
No.
Right, they go skinny dipping and then they forget to put the ladder down.
Okay.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
That's actually the premise of the film, and it's actually quite interesting. They literally they left like the baby on board and shit like that. So what if they actually did that?
Yeah, but a captain would never leave his ship.
Lifeboats. I know it's not, because obviously I was right in thinking it was more pirate ship based, that kind of double mast brigantine. I'm obviously looking at a picture now, but like, would they have anything like lifeboats and stuff like that?
They had one lifeboat on the ship, and the lifeboat was missing.
Are we sure
that before? Yeah, the lifeboat was gone.
Okay, that is one thing I was thinking when you said stuff was missing.
Yeah, it makes you think, though, that if a lifeboat's missing, people have evacuated the ship either voluntarily or by order.
Yeah.
But the captain would never leave. A captain would go down with the ship, wouldn't it?
Would he?
Times gone by, the whole phrase.
Can you honestly
say
that every single captain goes down with their ship?
No, I guess you can't. But the question there is, people would have taken their belongings unless they were in grave danger. There was no signs of them being under attack. There's not a strong suggestion that they were hit in a storm, but perhaps that's why some of the hold was full of water, because there were large waves maybe crashing on. But then you said the pump was disassembled. So presumably these are people taking perhaps evacuation measures, getting a pump onto the lifeboat during a storm to get water off the lifeboat. But then why would they leave their belongings behind?
I like where you're going with this, because these are all theories that people have put forwards towards it, especially that last one about the pump. So
the pump is the big red herring.
It is, yeah.
I don't know. That makes no sense. I understand if, say, for example, you were about to be hit by a massive wave, you would either
use
grab
the pump
hold
to
of.
Break it up. It's genius.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'd throw it at it and hope for the best. It's you hope Aquaman saves you, to be fair. But the thing about, if a wave's going to hit you, you're either going to brace for the impact or you're going to evacuate. But what do? Do you take your chances on a tiny little lifeboat, which I'm not
with a 2-year-old as well?
I'm not a boat specialist. I was about to say, but I don't know what the
Seaman.
proper name for a boat specialist.
Seaman.
I'm not seaman, so I can't really comment on whether or not the lifeboat's made of wood. The lifeboat's. What's the lifeboat made out of?
When I think of lifeboats, I just picture like the orange ones from the Titanic.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I don't think they'd be those lifeboats, would they? It would be like a small rowboat.
A spare lifeboat would be literally a small boat. It would be
boat?
not a canoe, but it would have been made out of
would it have a sail?
It would be like a rowing boat. I presume it would be a rowing boat.
Yeah.
So that's not going to take many people.
Well, no, but you would not take the ship out.
Yeah, but you might.
Not being able to carry the crew.
Yeah.
So if there's 11 people, you can, again, you see Titanic. I know that's obviously a few years on, but
maybe the Titanic learnt from this story.
Yeah. That's why it inevitably crashed and everyone died.
I'm guessing 1860 or this was 18 years on, 1878, whatever. This wouldn't be the first time where they thought, our lifeboat can only hold 2 people. Maybe we should make a bigger lifeboat. Yeah, that's not. They would have made a big enough lifeboat.
This guy, Ben Briggs, was very experienced as a sailor as well, so he definitely knew what he was doing.
He was experienced in seaman.
In being a seaman, he was very experienced.
Yes.
So, shall I sort of run through the theories that people put forward about this?
Yeah, go on.
Because a lot of them you've mentioned already.
Yeah, let's see if we can decipher them and work out the skeptic bits, and maybe if we might believe them. Let's hear them.
There's definitely 1 or 2 of these that I do believe are possible. So I'll leave those to the end.
And you're pretty skeptical about it, so
yeah.
don't try and warp us.
So
maybe mix them up. Put some that you believe, some that you don't believe. Let us hear them.
Okay, so I'll start with the really stupid ones. So these are all the sort of the supernatural theories about it.
UFO.
So
it'll be a UFO.
UFO.
Aliens.
Definitely. So the sort of supernatural theories around it. Attacked by a giant squid. It's killed all the crew and also left the ship largely undamaged.
And strategically use all its tentacles to pull everyone out of the underside of the ship without damaging any
like a Metal Gear Solid. It like snuck around.
Yeah.
It lured them onto the deck with sounds, with like squid sounds, and they're like, what is this?
And they went, what was that noise?
Yeah. And then from behind, it yanked each one of them off, including the baby.
Whose footprints are these?
That's a theory that people put forward.
No.
The other thing about that theory is that it doesn't explain anything. So, did the squid drink all the alcohol? Did it take the pump? Did it trash the captain's chambers just to be like, fuck you, man, and then just take itself aboard with everybody holding it in all of its 9 legs?
Right. Okay. Hang on. Obviously, we only got enough what people recorded. So this is all. The boat definitely never appeared anywhere else.
What do you mean it never appeared?
Or did it? So obviously, it set off. It never arrived at its destination, its intended destination at least.
Yeah, we've seen it at the Azores.
It was found by De Gracia. Mm-hmm. Are there any other sightings?
No, not recorded. So most of the evidence for this story is from diaries of the crew that were found on the ship as well, which basically there was like complete logs of the journey. And they were generally like normal logs, nothing bad was noted in them at all. That there was some bad weather at one
towards the end.
Even towards the end.
Okay, so if there was a big storm and they had to abandon ship, it would have either crushed the ship or damaged it in some way, surely. So
the ship was
there was no.
The ship was damaged, but it wasn't unseaworthy.
How was it damaged? Do you know?
So there was after they brought it back to Gibraltar, there was a salvage hearing put forward by, I guess, the court. And they basically went through, they tried to piece together the story, whether there was sort of any fraud or anything like that going on by De Gracia, conspiracies and stuff like that. And they basically did a whole investigation on the ship and stuff like that. So we get a lot of the information in the story from that.
Which was official from when it arrived in Gibraltar.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. What if it was De Gracia?
That's one of the main theories, and I'll get to that in a bit.
Okay.
So back to supernatural stuff. If the ship was undamaged, you ask, what about alien abduction? Well, the ship wasn't damaged enough to make it unseaworthy, but it was dishevelled, and in the court report, it describes it as a thoroughly wet mess. So the whole ship was basically waterlogged. There was water in most of the rooms of the ship. And that can be largely attributed to all the water in the hold. sloshing about, I guess.
I would have attributed that to just if it was unmanned and just sailing around the sea with no kind of direction, it would have just hit waves in ways that you would not want it to. You know, if someone's obviously sailing the ship, I was going to say driving, if someone's sailing the ship, then they're going to obviously steer it properly. They're going to be able to navigate waves properly. You hit them head on, don't you? You wouldn't.
You try and break them. You break the waves.
Exactly. Yeah, you try to break the waves. So if it's been knackered just because it's floating in the sea, wherever the sea takes it and the wind takes it, it's just going to get battered. Yeah. So if it's that kind of damage,
the ship was a mess, but it was still perfectly sailable because obviously they sailed at 600 miles to Gibraltar, perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd expect it to be bad if it's been traveling.
But there wasn't like
a month by this point.
Damage, like physical damage to the ship.
It was just
wear and tear looking.
Okay, and unintentional.
Yeah, and also the fact that the lifeboat was missing suggests that the crew deliberately abandoned the ship. So why would alien abduction make sense? Because the lifeboat was missing, and they definitely left with a lifeboat. Because why wouldn't they leave without a lifeboat? They would just be stupid.
Yeah, fair point.
A main theory that was put forward during the salvage hearing was mutiny. So, and this was based on the fact that there was empty barrels on the ship. So, what
you think they got drunk and tried to take over?
Exactly. This is what Sean was saying before. What if the crew got into the cargo, they drank 9 barrels empty, and then they murdered everyone else on the ship before departing on the lifeboat?
There was no blood, though, was there?
It was put forward during the salvage hearings after an examination of the Mary Celeste found strange marks that may have been caused by an axe, along with apparent traces of blood. This is what was found in close examination.
So you lied.
I deliberately avoided some facts.
I know you admitted some of the things. Okay, so yeah, okay. So
axe marks and blood.
That. Yeah.
Okay.
Apparent axe marks and apparent traces of blood. But it was later revealed that the marks were due to natural wear and tear, and the alcohol also wasn't fit for drinking. There was no motive for the mutiny because they didn't steal anything.
Trusted men.
They were trusted men. They all knew each other.
And it's his wife and kid.
And kid as well. And
it was the baby.
And also, why would the murderers kill them and then leave on the ship on the tiny lifeboat in the 19th century to their certain doom at sea?
By themselves.
Because if you leave a ship in the middle of the ocean on a lifeboat in the 19th century, you're probably going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they were near Azores by Portugal, but they were pretty far away from it.
Unless they could see land. Or maybe seagulls that they thought there was land and decided to get off the boat.
In the logs of the ship, they never mention that they could see land at any point.
Oh, interestingly, when was the last log? What was the date for the last log?
Do you know, I'm not sure. I think it was very close to when the ship was found.
Okay.
Like maybe a couple of days before.
But
there wasn't it's not like a video game where they write the log as they're being murdered. They didn't
oh my god, the man's coming. Oh my god, he's coming towards me with an axe. And some traces of blood.
Only the greatest video games.
Another theory that you also put forward is piracy. Pirates are definitely active during this time and also in this area around Portugal, but the ship was not looted, so there's no evidence that pirates attacked them and killed them.
But there was blood.
There
but
wasn't
again,
blood.
It's just I would rule out piracy unless there's some kind of specific motive and they were after a specific thing that has not been recorded. They would just want to nick whatever's valuable and plunder and pillage. But why would they leave the bodies?
Why would they dispose of the bodies? Because it's not like there's forensic investigation during this time. They can't get fingerprints and stuff.
Well, again, it doesn't make any sense because if they were attacked by pirates, why would they have... Wait, and you said the pump was disabled, so maybe the pirates nicked it. Maybe they just needed a lifeboat.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Although, if you were a pirate, wouldn't you just take the boat?
If you were a desperate pirate. What if you're not a pirate? What if you're just like, oh, hang on, crap, our boat's sinking. We need a lifeboat and a pump.
And the pump.
Yeah, but you just take
also the
boat.
navigation equipment, and also all the ship's papers. And let's just rough up the captain's quarters as well a bit. Just throw his things around.
So the captain's quarters was...
His stuff was kind of strewn about.
Unless they were looking for something in particular that the captain had.
The way I interpret it is that he was kind of frantically getting his stuff to leave. Because obviously the captain would be allowed to take the important things off the ship, but he wouldn't let the other people take their stuff because it wasn't needed for them to survive. But stuff like navigational equipment would definitely be needed.
I guess like a compass.
A compass, yeah.
Points north.
Like a sextant, which is what they would use, that weird triangle thing. So,
good job.
Probably the main conspiracy which was put forward during the salvage hearing, because they seemed quite biased, from what I read, was insurance fraud by the crew of the De Grazia.
Okay.
Maybe the De Grazia lay in wait for the Mary Celeste. They lured the crew on board their own ship and killed them.
Was there any evidence on their ship?
There wasn't. Not that I see. I didn't look too much into it, but none of the sources I saw mentioned that there was any evidence on the De Grazia of any murder. Right.
Yeah. No, it's not the De Grazia, because why would the pump and the lifeboat be missing? It's just no.
Yeah. And also the De Grazia left New York as well on the sort of the same voyage. But
why?
Because they were also a merchant ship delivering stuff across the Atlantic.
Okay.
And
it was just a contract, yeah.
So it's a merchant. The De Grazia is a merchant ship, a merchant vessel as well.
Yeah, most of the ships around this time on the Atlantic were merchant
so it's
vessels.
Not even like it's got the facility to actively board another ship.
Yeah, it wasn't a naval ship or
for piracy, like for example. It's probably not got it's not going to have cannons. It might. I guess it might have it might have pistols.
They probably personally had weapons just to protect themselves, but they definitely couldn't like sink a ship with their own fire. But the problem with this theory is that it ignores the fact that the De Grazia left New York 8 days after the Celeste, and they had no chance of catching up to it since the De Grazia was a much slower ship. So it was a bigger and a slower ship. So there was no way they could catch up to it and then lie in wait and ambush them. But perhaps it was a conspiracy by a partnership between Briggs and De Grazia, in which Briggs faked his own death and his family's in order to get the insurance money on the cargo, and then split it between the De Grazia and Briggs. But the problem
was the insurance money a lot?
I imagine so.
It did get paid out then?
I don't know how much insurance it is back then.
So the insurance money got paid out in half to the De Grazia at the end of the hearing, because they went fully convinced that there wasn't a conspiracy going on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But there was also no evidence that
the De Grazia actually were guilty.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like a 50-50 decision.
This is why I sort of said that it kind of felt a bit biased, because the guy who led the hearing kind of sounded like, in the things I read about him, kind of sounded like he hated the captain of the De Grazia. So I don't know whether there was bad blood between him and
maybe
the captain or not. But the problem with this partnership conspiracy is that Briggs left his son Arthur at home with his grandmother and didn't bring him on the voyage. So if he was going to fake his own death and escape after taking the insurance money, why would he leave his son behind? Surely he'd bring his whole family with him.
Yeah, you'd think so.
Unless they met up after and the son knew about it.
His son was 8 years old, I think. He was a little kid, so...
He was a genius.
He was.
Yeah, but the thing is, the boat went missing off the coast of the Azores.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even like if he was going to leave the boat, he'd have somewhere to go, because you're in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And so faking the death and taking the lifeboat presumably means that he would have sailed to the Azores, which it sounded like they weren't in eye contact of.
Mm-hmm. And also, you need to remember that they probably abandoned the ship way before the Azores. And the
tide is taking
the ship just sailed that way on its own. Just happened to go that way. So they probably abandoned ship in the middle of the ocean with no idea which way land was.
Is this anything to do with Bermuda Triangle?
So the Bermuda Triangle is between Bermuda, the Caribbean, and Florida. So that tells you where it is. But it's a long way across the Atlantic to carry on going by wave alone, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm just ruling that out completely, basically. I just wanted to... honestly, mainly because I Googled Mary Celeste, and then the suggestion that came up was Bermuda Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason it popped into my head as a potential thing, basically.
Yeah. So I'll kind of go on to the more scientific theories now, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
Both of these theories are quite popular, and they both seem like they've got some hope, I guess, of being things that actually happened. So the first one is an alcohol explosion. So it relates to the leaking of alcoholic fumes out of the ship's cargo, so those 9 barrels which were empty. Such fumes could have caused a small explosion as a result of the hot temperatures around the Azores, and it would lead to Briggs ordering a temporary evacuation of the ship. And they do this by securing the lifeboat to the ship with a rope, and then sailing behind the ship until they're sure there is no danger. However, the rope might have come undone and then left them behind in the middle of the ocean.
This still doesn't explain the pump.
It doesn't explain the pump.
Well, the pump was for propulsion.
The pump is to empty water out of the hold in case it floods.
Or to propel.
Yeah, but they'd have tied...
It's a sail ship.
It's a sail ship.
They didn't use pumps. There wasn't a
There would have been a rudder and the sail and
yeah, but they could have used it. They could have used the pump to if it. Yeah,
this isn't. They're not going to MacGyver a faster sailing vessel using the pump, are they?
Well, no. I was right. Okay, if it's literally like a pump in, like it's a siphon kind of.
I think it's a very old style pump, so it's presumably going to have some sort of bellows that sucks air into it and displaces water out the other side.
There's no way to use it to create some kind of propulsion, but
unless it's MacGyver, yeah.
The lack of evidence of explosion damage to the ship weakens this theory. However, such an event...
You said there was no fire damage or anything like that.
Which you'd think. But a guy called Andrea Serra of University College London sort of modelled this explosion as it would have happened. So he made a small model of the hold of what I imagine he imagined the hold would look like. I don't think there's any detailed specifications of the hold of the ship.
No, but I guess most boats would presumably be built in a fairly standard way.
Mm-hmm. So he made a small model of the hold and he sent through an explosion caused by butane gas. So this is a different type of gas. And the explosion left no fire damage in the hold because what was created was a pressure wave type of explosion.
Yeah, I kind of understand that.
It makes you, that does kind of tie in as well, doesn't it? Because if you imagine if Briggs is in his chambers with his wife and his daughter, explosion goes off, they panic, he grabs the important stuff, the crew evacuate on the lifeboat. The pump bit is still the bit that we can't explain. It might be unrelated. The pump might have been disassembled for repair from breaking the moment it left Maine. New York. But I guess we don't know. But that could potentially explain it.
Yeah.
But
I find that one quite interesting, though.
That is an interesting one.
Yeah, just because we're thinking explosion, right?
We're thinking like modern Michael Bay explosion.
It set the entire thing off.
It would just cause a noise, and they might blow open a door or something, and they'd be like, "Oh crap, we don't know what's happening." Get in the lifeboat. We'll tie it to the ship just to make sure. Which I guess was sort of standard practice at those times. Like you'd fasten the lifeboat to the ship just in case you can get back onto the ship if there's no danger.
But these are experienced sailors, though. They know how to tie a knot.
Yeah, you think so, wouldn't you?
It's not even the boat
unless
thing.
the baby tied the knot.
Honestly, it's the explosion. It might leave no fire damage, but yes, explosions can happen underwater. But what's the spark?
The heat.
Spontaneous combustion.
Saying the heat from.
They were near the equator, so it was probably pretty hot.
Yeah.
The thing is, what do you need to start?
You said it was waterlogged, so was it waterlogged before? Was it? Because I know some old ships do just naturally fill up with water. That's why they need the pump, right? So.
Well, I'm not sure that it was waterlogged before. It probably got waterlogged after they left the ship and they went sailing it.
As far as I know, unless it's made out of, metal sheets and everything, and it's waterlogged like modern ships and stuff.
Waterproof.
Waterproof. Well, yeah. What did I say? Waterlogged. Sorry.
Yeah.
So unless it's waterproof, it's sealed completely. The whole point of if you imagine a bowl, if it rains, if a wave hits the ship, there's going to be water just pouring in through the deck.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not going to run off, so it's going to fill up. That's obviously why they need the, not just for emergency situations, they'll need that pump. So I know you said the wood's porous and stuff, but surely, I don't know. I just can't see the explosion happening.
Yeah, it's a bit of a
stretch, isn't it, to explain everything? Unless, of course, the explosion was caused by some form of accident that didn't necessarily hurt anybody, but somehow weakened the adjacent wood around it and allowed the wood to get a little bit more water in, and it just became waterlogged over time, like Alex was saying. Just because there's no obvious explosive damage, you can't tell whether or not there's a tiny, tiny leak that's just slowly letting water in, or slowly keeping water in, I should say. Someone's obviously got to man the pump. They're not electronic. They're not like electric powered, or they'll be literally in some form of pneumatic pump.
There was 2 pumps on the ship.
One was dismantled.
Yeah, okay. One was dismantled, the other one was still there.
Okay, so just to be clear, when you say disassembled, you don't mean that it was taken apart and left on the ship?
Yeah, it was.
You mean it was just... Oh, it was on the ship?
It was taken apart and put on the deck of the ship, as if they were in the process of repairing it.
Oh. Okay,
so
right,
it
sorry,
was,
yeah, that's
right.
my bad.
I thought you meant the pump was like just gone.
No, it was there, but it was in pieces on the deck of the ship. And I did say it was found next to a makeshift sounding device, which is something they'd use to measure the amount of water in the hold. Sounding device.
Okay,
yeah.
I thought that was... I when I heard you say that the first time, I presumed that was some sort of alarm.
No, it's like a rod that they'd use to... Like the thing you'd use in your car to see how much oil is in the...
Oil's in it, sure.
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
But a big one for a ship.
Yeah, just a massive dipstick, basically.
Yeah. So the kind of the last theory is all about this pump. So in the past, the Mary Celeste have been used to transport coal, and that caused a lot of dust and might have clogged up the ship's pumps.
Okay.
Because obviously ships are kind of hard to clean, I imagine.
Yeah.
That they're very big, so there probably would be a lot of coal dust, even years after any coal was on the ship.
Yeah.
Since one of the pumps was found on the deck of the ship, the crew may have been attempting to repair it. With the pump inoperative, brigs wouldn't be able to tell how much seawater was in the hold. And this is further supported by the makeshift sounding device, which is also found on the deck. So he might have overestimated how much water was in the hold, and the occupants to abandon ship before it sank.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the theory that I believe most.
I like that theory. I'm trying to think of the plot holes in that theory.
One of the plot holes is that, again, they could just fasten the lifeboat to the ship just to see whether it was going to sink or not.
Then again, I guess if the ship goes down, how do you untie... Oh, I guess
it doesn't make any sense to me.
Cut the rope.
It makes more sense, but you think about it, right? They got every single person onto that lifeboat. Surely, seeing as the ship was still seaworthy and survived with no crew for that kind of time, why were they in such a rush to get off without taking any kind of valuables?
Because he might have used his sounding device and then got a wrong reading.
Yeah, maybe he thought there were like 2 to 3 meters of water or something. Yeah.
Well, could he not just go and look?
No, because
that sounds really stupid. But
I mean, how would you look in there if it was full of water?
It's full of water. That's the thing. You can't.
And it's low down in the ship as well, so there isn't light. They didn't have torches and stuff back then.
Yeah, and it could have been the middle of the night, under moonlight only, perhaps.
And the way I imagine they do this is they take readings over a number of readings over a length of time to see the buildup of water. And maybe he took 5 readings and he thought the ship was filling with water really, really fast, and they had literally minutes before they were going to sink. But again, if they were in the middle of the ocean and they got onto a lifeboat, they were probably going to die anyway.
So they took the lifeboat. They took the navigation equipment. That makes sense. I still... Obviously, we don't know exactly what's missing, right?
Yeah, because there isn't a log of what was on the ship to start with, besides the cargo.
I just quickly did a Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
I did a Wikipedia.
Yeah.
It doesn't make as much sense as did a Google, but the effects on crew of alcohol fumes rising from the cargo.
So you're kind of stuck on this mutiny theory, are you?
No,
does that sound like the most likely?
Or do you think they went crazy?
No, yeah.
The thing is, we're assuming that anybody who potentially either took over the ship and took them either as prisoners or wanted to kill them. The thing is, you wouldn't stab them. You'd throw them overboard, and then they wouldn't be able to get back on the boat. Bodies would never be found. They would, in all essence, be missing.
Yeah, But then, if you did that and took over the ship, why would you then leave it on the lifeboat?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's true.
Surely you stay on the ship and steal it and take it away somewhere because you've got all this money worth of cargo on it that you could then sell.
Yeah. Well, you're saying about the heat.
Yeah.
Right. One thing that popped into my head at the start of this. What about mirages? So yeah,
that's true.
Have some kind of water supply that isn't the sea. Obviously, you can't drink seawater, but if it's that hot and they become dehydrated for whatever reason,
yeah, they delirious.
The alcohol fumes as well. Delirium. Yeah.
Again, there was loads of provisions on the ship, which I assume is a lot of water supply.
But did they account for heat stroke?
I mean, if you've got a lot of water, there's no reason why you get heat stroke.
If it's hot if you're that they would set the alcohol on fire, surely it's hot enough to
get heat stroke from being stood in the sun all day.
Yeah,
they didn't have suntan
but
lotion,
not all of them would get heat stroke at the same time.
No, that's true.
And also, these are experienced sailors. I imagine they're used to these conditions on a ship.
True.
Yeah, and probably have ways of preventing that.
Like the only people on the ship who probably weren't used to it was the wife and the daughter, but the child's no threat, and the woman is a woman surrounded by 9 men.
Yeah, you presume that unless she had some sort of access to a weapon, I don't know. I'm making the assumption that back then she would have not been a person carrying a weapon. It does make me wonder about the whole whether or not they were in sight of the Azores, whether or not they could see it and decided to go aboard in a hurry because something had happened on the ship.
Yeah.
So perhaps they were actually already there. Were, I don't know, maybe not anchored, but maybe in plain sight of the Azores. Then some sort of event triggered, like perhaps they saw another ship on the horizon, maybe thinking it's pirates, or maybe there was some sort of medical emergency of some kind. Perhaps maybe the wife or the child got ill and the captain said, we're leaving now to get to land.
Yeah.
And then it was such a hurry that...
faster?
Well, I don't know. Maybe if they're close enough, they're worried about grounding the ship.
And also, if they felt they were close to land, they'd be more likely to abandon ship due to lesser issues.
True.
Like, even if there was the pump was faulty and they were taking on water, but they were probably okay. But if they could see land, they could abandon ship.
Yeah, could abandon it
because it would be a lot safer to abandon ship in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of the whole thing. Like, I kind of lean more towards the pump congestion theory. The alcohol explosion one seems a bit far-fetched to me, and it seems like a lot of things need to occur for it to happen.
Yeah, it relies on too many. It relies on too much chance, doesn't it? To link things together.
But when has this ever happened? I'm skeptical. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of chance, the whole idea of things matching up perfectly for the chance of this all to happen, it could. It could have actually been the perfect storm.
Yeah, it definitely could have. I mean, there's holes in all these theories, but some seem more likely than others, in my opinion. And
annoying me. I want to know now.
These murder, mutiny and piracy things, there's no motive to them, in my opinion. So they don't seem very likely. And the conspiracy one has a lot of holes in it as well. But the conspiracy one will probably be my third most likely theory behind the two scientific ones.
Which one's the conspiracy one?
That they either the Grazia on its own or a partnership between Briggs and the Grazia.
Oh sure, yeah, okay. The fraud one.
To get the insurance money on the cargo. And they did get the insurance money on the cargo, the Grazia, but they only got half of it in the end because of the chance that there could be fraud.
Oh, which did they get?
I don't know.
Well, if it's insurance for the entire cargo and everything, it's going to be quite a bit. I'm not going to guess by today's standards.
Yeah, also this is 19th century money, so it probably could be 20 quid. And that might be a lot of money back then.
Yeah. And also, what currency is it in?
Well, I imagine
it's US dollars.
US dollars.
Or Canadian dollars.
Yeah.
No, if they sent it from New York.
It was owned by an American company, wasn't it?
Yeah, okay.
So, do I kind of leave it there? It's a bit annoying that none of us know what happened.
It's annoying because we don't have an answer.
This is a long time ago.
This is the point. This is the point.
Okay, so I guess we'll kind of end our discussion there. I reckon that probably pump congestion is probably the most likely theory, just because it kind of takes into account all of the facts. Do you guys agree?
I guess. With the pump congestion, was that like quite a recent theory as well?
Yeah, that was maybe 10 years ago, 2008, something like that. There was a documentary based solely on that theory.
Yeah, okay. I remember you saying that. So that kind of has me, thinking there's a lot more education, modern education. There's a lot more experience, a lot more instruments that could have been done to measure stuff and test and everything. There's just surely one of the more better theories. I know this isn't going to be conclusive, but what if the amount of time to develop the theory must make it more credible because more people have had time to think about it, right?
Yeah.
That's my. I do actually think it's the pump thing. What do you think, Stu?
I think I'd agree. It has the best grounding. It covers all the facts. It leaves the least to chance unless we've missed something obvious. And I think overall, whilst it would be great to imagine it being something weird and wonderful.
Yeah, I was literally just about to say that.
Wouldn't it be amazing if it was a squid? It was definitely
giant squid. I mean, giant squid do exist, but they're not that giant. It's kind of disappointing how small giant squid are.
I also don't think they can Metal Gear Solid style sneak their way across.
I mean, you don't know. How many giant squid have you met?
How many squids have you seen?
That's a fair point.
I bet less than one.
Fair point.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Ramblings of a Madman. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or spread the word. Show your friends, show your mum, show your dog, I guess. Get in touch with us on Twitter at Rome Podcast. That's ROAM Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.